What is up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about my top 5 favorite smartphone picks in the mid-range category right now, around the price bracket of $300 to $400, starting with the Google Pixel 4a 5G. This is an awesome phone and one of the best camera phones on this list. As well. So the design it's kind of a kind of a dull design. I like the design. I think it looks much better than previous Pixel phones. It's just an an all plastic, pretty basic design, but at least they did the screen right with this one. And now you have a punch hole display on here. It's an OLED display at 6.2 inches, 1080p, 413 for the PPI. I was really happy with the display on the Pixel 4a 5G. It looked really great color wise, bright, and like I said, it's got the punch hole, so no more just awkward designs on the front of these phones anymore. So I really like that. The bonus with Pixel phones is that you get the latest version of Android very fast. So when Android 12 comes out, you'll be the first one to get that, which is really nice. So these phones are great for people that care about software, and it's just a clean software experience as well with the Snapdragon 765G, 5G, and the Adreno 620. This phone was plenty enough smooth and fast, bouncing in and out of applications. Also doing some gaming on here was perfectly fine on here. I had zero issues with performance. This phone was just super smooth. There is no micro SD support on here. 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on here, along with some really nice sounding stereo speakers as well. Very full sounding, very loud, so I'm always happy when I get stereo speakers on really any phone, honestly. So the phone does have NFC as well as a physical fingerprint scanner on the back. That works very fast as well. And definitely the star of the show with this phone is still the cameras. You do have a dual camera setup at 12.2 megapixels, and then you have a 16 megapixel ultra wide. It can shoot in 4K video, also an 8 megapixel selfie camera that shoots in 1080p. As you can see from the photos here, I really like the Pixel 4a's photos here. Very natural image processing on here. Colors looked very natural. Great detail as well. Great depth of field. An excellent ultra wide camera. The phone does okay with video, but the stills on here are really what you're buying it for. It has pretty decent and lower light shots as well. So overall, you're going to be really impressed with the cameras on the Pixel 4a. This phone also has a 3,885 milliamp battery, 18 watt fast charging, no type of wireless charging, and no type of IP rating, of course. But the battery life on here is pretty good. You can get, well, I got at least around 6 hours, 6 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time, which is definitely enough. But if you are on 5G, you might get less screen on time, but again, it varies on how you use your phone. Next is the iPhone SE 2020. So you can pick up a refurbished version for around $350. A new one will cost you around $400, I believe. This is an excellent phone. Again, one of my favorite mid-rangers, honestly, because it's very compact, which they don't really make compact phones these days, so it's always nice. This one does have sort of a older design, like the iPhone 8 design. That's the only kind of gripe with the iPhone SE 2020, but it is a premium design. It does feel great in the hand. It's glass and metal. This phone also has a pretty tiny display, the tiniest on this list at 4.7 inches, 720p plus 326 for the PPI as well. So the display looked fine to me, and it is also the only display on this list without any type of punch hole or notch, which is nice. So if you're anti-notch punch hole, this is a great phone. The phone does have the latest version of iOS, but you have the Apple A13 chip on here, so this phone is going to get updates for years and years to come, and it's just a very powerful phone. That's one of the main things with this phone, is it's super fast. It can pretty much play any game, no problem. This is just a blazing fast and powerful phone, so that is definitely a plus about this phone. No SD card support, of course, no headphone jack on here, 64 gigs of internal storage and 3 gigs of RAM. Again, performance wise, this phone is a beast. Don't worry about performance at all. You do have pretty respectable sounding stereo speakers on here. They have pretty good bass quality. They get fairly loud. Again, you guys know how it feels. As long as they have stereo speakers, it's a win. So this phone does have NFC with Apple Pay, of course, and Touch ID is actually fine on here. It works very fast, especially in these times where you have to have a mask and stuff like that. So that definitely works out these days. So this phone also has a really good camera on it, but the sort of negative thing with this phone, it's the only phone on this list with just a single lens. So it's just a 12 megapixel lens, 4K video, 7 megapixel selfie, 1080p video for that one. So there's no ultra wide, depth, macro. It's just this camera, but it does take excellent photos. So I have to give it that. It does take really good photos, and also very smooth and nice looking video as well. So image processing detail on here for 400 bucks, this is one of the the top dogs for cameras, even though, like I said, it does not have the just the other lenses. But the battery life on here is just okay. It's a 1821 milliamp battery, so it's a little small, but it does have wireless charging. So for a mid-ranger to have wireless charging is really nice as well, so I have to give points for that. But battery life, you'll usually get around maybe 4 or 5 hours of screen on time, depending on how hard you use it. Next is the Samsung Galaxy A52, and this phone retails for around $350 right now, and all those links will be down below. And I've really been enjoying this phone. I really love the design on here. Even though it's a plastic body, it has a matte finish which just looks great. It doesn't pick up fingerprints at all. It's actually IP67 dust and water resistant, which is really nice. So it's just an overall well built phone. I really like it, and it has one of the best displays on this list. Actually, it's got Samsung Super AMOLED 90 Hertz display, so it's extremely smooth display on here when you're scrolling Instagram or just swiping through the home screen. It is a smooth experience. It is a 1080p panel, again 6.5, so it's definitely a big panel with the little punch hole. You also have 407 for the PPI on here. So overall, one of my favorite displays on this list by far. Out of the box, you get Android 11 with One UI 3.1, the Snapdragon 720G on here, Adreno 618. It's sufficient. I have a whole video on this phone gaming wise. It does play games decently. I wouldn't necessarily call it a gaming phone, but you can do casual gaming on here, no problem. You do have micro SD support on here with 128 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM on here. This has really great sounding stereo speakers as well, very crisp and clear, so I really like that. Good bass presence. Also NFC is on board. The fingerprint scanner is under the glass, and that is actually really fast, and it has face unlock as well. So the cameras on the A52 are actually really good at 64 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, 5 megapixel depth. So you do have that quad camera setup to play with, and then you have 4K video on the front and back, along with a 32 megapixel selfie. So it's just overall an excellent camera color wise. This does good with detail. The macro camera is fun to play with. Depth of field is really good. These are some really solid cameras. So the mid-range game has just really been stepped up this year, and I'm really loving it. So battery life on here is pretty good. 4,500 milliamp battery with 25 watt fast charging. So you get really fast charging speeds with this phone, and battery life, you should get around 7 hours of screen on time with this phone. It's definitely a full day use of a phone. Next is the MOTO G9 Plus. This is a massive phone, might be the biggest phone on this list, I believe. So if you're somebody that wants this a huge phone, 300 bucks right now. It's got a plastic design, but it's got a really nice design, and I really love the color that I got because it didn't show fingerprints and stuff like that. But yeah, so I really like the design in here. Still looks good. It's got a massive 6.8 inch display. It's an IPS panel, 1080p 386 for the PPI. Little punch hole on the left hand side. It is a pretty nice looking display. Like I said, if you want a big phone, this definitely is huge. Good colors, gets fairly bright as well. Out of the box, you get a pretty stock version of Android 10 on here, and you have the Snapdragon 730G and Adreno 618. Overall, this was a very smooth phone since it's got that pretty much near stock experience on here. So just flies through applications. It's pretty good at gaming. Again, casual gaming, Call of Duty Mobile, PUBG will all be sufficient on this device. You also have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM on here, which is really nice. A headphone jack with NFC, but this phone only has a single firing speaker. So with such a massive phone, I really would have loved to seen a stereo speaker setup, but it is what it is. Now the phone's cameras are okay. They're not the greatest. So you have a quad camera setup, 64 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro and 2 megapixel depth, 4K video, 16 megapixel selfie, 1080p video. I think this one might have the weakest cameras out of all of these phones, so I wouldn't necessarily buy this phone for, you know, the cameras themselves. You have to be in really good lighting to get a pretty good shot with this phone. If you take it out of any type of great lighting, then it just takes sort of softer photos. Color accuracy wasn't super impressive on here. This has always been a you know, an area where Motorola has struggled with on their budget devices, but overall, the cameras are usable, as you can see from the shots, so they're just decent cameras, but definitely not as good as these on the list. Now, you do have a 5,000 milliamp battery with very fast charging speeds at 30 watts, which is awesome. So this phone charges really fast, and it's got the biggest battery on this list and the best battery life on this list as well. So definitely check out the G9 Plus. Last on the list is the Xiaomi Redmi Note 10 Plus, and I do have this phone coming, guys. It's shipping from India, unfortunately, so it's taking a minute, but to me, this is going to be the phone, the mid-ranger of the year, because it's just a beast. Like, once you hear the spec sheet, it's just crazy. So it does come in. I paid $325 plus 25 for, you know, shipping, you know, from India or whatever, but just to lift off the spec sheet, I'm hyped for this phone. You got a glass back, plastic frame on here, IP53 dust and, you know, splash resistant on here. This one actually has an AMOLED 120 hertz display on here, so that's just crazy for, you know, the $300. A 6.67 inch display, 1080p, $395 for the PPI. So display is looking great. You get the latest Android 11, MIUI 12 out the box, Snapdragon 732G and Adreno 618, micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM, and there is a 128 gig version with 6 gigs of RAM, so you can just get that one if that's not enough storage. Stereo speakers are on board, the headphone jack is on board, you know, NFC is on board, the infrared port is there. So as you can see, Xiaomi is really bringing the heat with these with their mid-ranger and budget phones. To me, they make some of the best budget phones. I've been saying that for a while now. And then you got this crazy camera setup at 108 megapixels, so that is just going to be nuts. So if you want to see this phone, be sure to subscribe. But 8 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, 2 megapixel depth, 4K video, and then you have a 16 megapixel selfie, shoots 1080p. And then to top it off, you have a massive battery on this phone, 5,020 milliamps, 33 watt fast charging on here. I think the only thing this phone is missing is like some type of wireless charging. But yeah, so this phone is going to be a beast. Check it out. I'll drop that link down below. That's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one.